So, I trust that you're all well this morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us for the Wellbeing webinar, which has been jointly hosted by Nolands and the Kaya Group. Just in terms of the logistics for this morning's sessions, as I've said, we'll all be on mute. However, we'll open the chat box and we're going to encourage you to ask questions there. We'll see how the session progresses, but the idea is that Heidi is going to talk us through the importance of well-being, not only for ourselves, but also for those around us, both in our work and our personal lives. Thereafter, we'll go through the questions raised in the chat box, and then we'll respond accordingly. If we don't get to all the questions, depending on how much time we've got, because we obviously want to respect everybody's time, what Heidi has said that she'll do is she will collate all the questions and come up with a common response, and then we'll send that out to everybody, all the attendees afterwards. By way of a brief introduction to the two hosts, I'll introduce both of us, and then we can hand over to Heidi and get on to what we're all here for. So Heidi van Schalkwyk is the managing partner of the Kaya Group. Heidi is a highly qualified organizational psychologist who has many years experience in consulting and draws on her broad expertise encompassing psychometrics, emotional intelligence, energy management and well-being, team effectiveness, executive and team coaching, leadership and talent development, all with the focus of unlocking the potential inside individuals at all levels of the organization. For those of you who don't know Nolands, by way of brief introduction to us, we are a firm of not your ordinary auditors and pitch ourselves as the alternative to the Big Four. Nolands offers its clients an integrated service, including audit, advisory, tax, and forensic services, whereby we're able to meet all your statutory, compliance, and business requirements. We have also recently added Nolands Law into our service offering. What differentiates Nolands from our peers is our focus on relationships and solutions. And today is no different. We identified that not only our clients, but also our whole team internally needed to get a better understanding of the concept of well-being. So we looked into our network and identified the relationship that we have with Heidi and approached her to help us with a solution in this regard. And that is how today's webinar came into being. Before I hand over to Heidi, I just wanted to remind all the attendees that Heidi has kindly given us all free access to the Kaya's group's well-being indicator after the webinar. The well-being indicator is an assessment tool designed to measure 7 key drivers of well-being that contribute to optimal well-being. Once completed, you'll get a personalized report on your current state of well-being and recommendations to strengthen the current strategies in this regard. Thank you, and now let's hand over to Heidi. Over to you, Heidi.
Thank you so much, Daryl. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share some of Kaya's insights on well-being. And I hope you will be able to take some of the strategies that I will share with you today and implement them in your own life so that you can experience optimal well-being. So I would just like to share my screen. Give me a moment. Okay. Right, so I am making the assumption now that all of you are seeing my screen. If you are not seeing it, just give me a shout. Daryl, is it?
We can see it.
Okay, is it the way that it should be?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, guys. Right, so let's take a look at well-being.
Sorry, Heidi, just wanted to confirm there was a question. Will this be recorded to view later? Yes, it is being recorded, guys.
All
Thanks,
right,
Heidi.
no worries. No worries. All right, guys. So challenges arise really that demand our collective attention and action. And I think no more so than the current circumstances that we're facing. We're facing a global pandemic. We're also facing quite a lot of global economic stresses and also global political uncertainty. So activities and things that we've never had to deal with, things like lockdowns, quarantine, these are all new things that we need to deal with. And this brings an unusual amount of stress and anxiety amongst people. And there's already all of these signs of what they call COVID fatigue or COVID burnout that people are starting to deal with. Some of the symptoms of that are things like from depression to anxiety, to irritability, frustration, even post-traumatic stress. So all of us need to deal with all of these psychological stresses that we've never had to deal with before. However, if we really think about it, every one of us has to face challenges. And challenges is a very necessary and essential part of all our lives. Now, you might think, okay, why do you say that? The reason is that if we did not go through challenges or demands, we would not grow. Now, even though these might be uncomfortable and even possibly painful at times, and even in a way leave people languishing in a manner of speaking, these are still opportunities for growth and development and for learning. But that also depends on how we look at these challenges. So when a challenge arises, we can either decide to take a look at this challenge and view it as an opportunity, or maybe an adversity, or maybe it's just a change. Now, this is different from person to person. Some people, if we take a look at a simple example, might view a delayed train or a cancelled flight very differently from other people. Now, why is that? The reason is that people respond very differently to life's challenges, and they apply certain resources and support systems that they have to bring them back to a state of homeostasis. So that is that balance. We want to move back to where we feel in control. Now, if we look at well-being in particular, well-being is a very dynamic state. And we determine our state of well-being by how we perceive our challenges in comparison with how we perceive our resources to deal with these challenges. When we experience optimal well-being, this is where we feel good, things are great, work is fantastic, and our personal lives are doing well as well. However, we might also find ourselves in a space where we experience these challenges and need to draw upon different amounts of resources to deal with these challenges. Now, guess what? Well-being is actually not new. We all have been practicing this our entire lives, sometimes consciously and sometimes even a lot of the times unconsciously. But well-being is a very multidimensional construct. And I think it's worthwhile to point out that up until recently, well-being really had a very narrow definition. And you might be familiar with the concept of wellness. So wellness basically points to that physical well-being or physical energy when it comes to the entire well-being construct. When we take a look at well-being in its holistic form, we actually add to this mental, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being as well. And organizations are starting to recognize that well-being is much more than just the wellness part. Now, these different dimensions of well-being, they indicate the type of challenges that we might deal with, So challenges being spiritual, emotional, physical, mental, and so forth. But they also indicate the type of resources that we need to deal with these challenges. Now, the thing is, when we look at our resources, the higher our gauge in our resource tank, so to speak, the more effectively we are actually able to deal with what the ups and downs of life brings. Typically, life well-being can be viewed on a continuum. On the far right-hand side, you would find that when people find themselves here, this indicates optimal well-being. And optimal well-being is where we feel good and we're doing well. When we find ourselves on the far left-hand side of this continuum, we get overwhelmed and literally brought down by stresses. We're struggling and we're just trying to survive. This can unfortunately then also lead to ill mental health. But I think what's important here to point out is that because well-being can be depicted as a continuum, it means that we can actually move this. So that means that we can add resources and support to our arsenal of skills so that we can deal effectively with our challenges and push ourselves back into the space of optimal well-being. So I would like to pose a question, and I would like you to honestly answer this silently by yourselves. Are you struggling at this stage? Are you surviving or barely surviving at this stage? Or maybe you are thriving. So if we take a look just at something like depression and anxiety, 4.5 million South Africans deal with depression every day. And by the way, this was before COVID. That number has now increased with a further 44% since COVID arrived in our shores. Now that is quite staggering, and it does not show any indication at this stage that this is decreasing at this point in time. I would like to share with you a little bit, and this is going to be a bit of an exercise that we're going to do about the different emotional states that people are experiencing. So you will see there on the far right, top right corner, we have thriving. On the left top side, we've got surviving, left bottom burnout, and right bottom, we have rest and recovery. So if we take a look at a typical story that we might find ourselves in, it might look like this. So we know that when we experience optimal well-being, we are feeling good and we're doing well. We are enthusiastic, we are optimistic, we are engaged in our work, we're confident, and we feel challenged, but challenged in a good way. So this is really where people thrive and they are at their best, both at work, but also at home. Now, the fact of the matter is, and all of you know, that we don't stay in that space. Things happen, so to speak. And we don't choose these things to happen to us. We are usually, challenges and demands usually come from the outside, and they push us, so to speak, in what we call the surviving zone. You don't stand up in the morning and decide, okay, today is the day I need to be impatient and irritable with everyone around me. That does not happen. You get pushed into that space. And it might follow the following path, a simple path. You wake up in the morning just to find out that the dog peed in the room and you stepped into a puddle. Then you get to the shower just to figure out that, oh, damn, load shedding has happened. Now I don't have hot water. Right. Then you go rushing to the office. On your way there, a taxi pushes past you, nearly taking off your side mirror in the process. You get to the office desperately trying to get at least a cup of coffee to give you that boost in the early morning, and you accidentally hit your coffee cup and it spills over your laptop. Now, these are small little things, but they can also look very differently, and things will start to add up. And people become then impatient, irritable, frustrated, angry, defensive, even fearful, anxious, and worried. And I think a lot of you might recognize the state that we are currently finding ourselves in with the COVID pandemic. All of us have experienced any one or more of these on a regular basis. Now, when we're in the surviving zone, this is literally what we call, you can see it as fight or flight. And when a human being finds themselves in that fight or flight zone, our focus gets narrowed. Our logical and rational thinking goes out the door. And we react. We react basically on impulse, right? So we become reactive and very impulsive, and we don't think before what we do. This, unfortunately, or the consequences of this, can cause us great distress in our personal relationships, in our work relationships, in our general experience of our work. And ultimately, it can cost us our well-being. Because when we stay in that state, in that survival mode, where we are stressed and worried and anxious and frustrated, at a certain point in time, we drop down into burnout. And this is the one place where you do not want to find yourself. And it's very difficult to, once you find yourself in burnout, to get out of burnout. Burnout can cause people to be unable even to work or function properly for a minimum of 3 years. It can go up to 8 years if you get proper burnout. The only time that it is permitted or acceptable to fall in this space is when we experience loss. So grief, when a loved one has passed, then we can experience burnout. Now, you might say to me, but all right, how do I get out of this? What can I do to move back into thriving? So the antidote to get ourselves out of surviving or out of burnout is what we call rest and recovery. This is where we take the time to gather ourselves. Now, guys, when it comes to rest and recovery doesn't mean that every second or third week you need to go on a week-long holiday to get everything back to normal again. Rest and recovery can be as quick as 30 seconds if you know how to do this. So it's anything from 30 seconds to once a year or every now and then take a weekend away or a holiday at the beach. So the idea is that when we find ourselves in that surviving zone, that we recognize surviving zone as an alarm bell that goes off. It's an alarm bell that our body tells us that, listen, you are now in that survival space. You need to recover or rest so that you can go back into thriving. And this can happen multiple times during the day. Now, this little exercise actually also then indicates to you that well-being is not something that just happens to people. It does not come wrapped in a box with a blue ribbon and delivered by Take-A-Lot on your doorstep. This is really something that people need to prepare for. You have to cultivate and nurture your well-being, and you have to privately defend it. You are the owner of your own well-being, and you are therefore also accountable for your own well-being. The great thing about well-being is that well-being is really a whole life of resource capability, which means that well-being can be applied in your personal life, but also in your professional life. And well-being is the one thing that allows us to operate within and beyond your VUCA environment. For those who are asking me what is VUCA, just a quick one there. It means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment that we live in today. And believe me, guys, if you look back just at the history of your own work life, your work has not gotten less as time goes by. It actually has increased. Your stresses, demands, and challenges that you face have not decreased. They have increased. So I can probably say very confidently to you that the future and what the future holds will increase our demands and challenges. And for that particular reason, when we talk about well-being, we're not saying that, you know what, you've got to wait literally for the proverbial pawpaw to hit the fan before you actually do something about it. The great thing is that well-being can actually be preventative. We can front load our resources of well-being in anticipation for challenges that we might face in the future. Now, guys, well-being, yes, is a very personal thing, as I pointed out to you earlier. But well-being is also everyone's business. Now, the reason I say this is because when we look at well-being and Kaya's philosophy of well-being, we look at this from a point of interdependence and interrelatedness. How that works is that individual, you will see that as depicted by the I there right at the top. The individual contributor in an organization or in a community, that would be you. Your well-being has an impact on the team or family or the we that you are part of. That impact of that team overall has an impact on the organization that you are part of. And those organizations are part of the communities that we function in. So organizations can create cultures of well-being where we can enable our individual contributors, our employees, to be able to practice optimal well-being. That means we'll be equipping them with certain skills, and those skills they would actually share also then with the family members or friends. And that, once again, guys, will spill into our communities. And I think all of us can agree that communities around the world or countries around the world are not well. Now, leaders play a very important role in this story because remember, leaders role model well-being. What a leader pays attention to, what a leader deems important. They signal to the rest of the employees what is important in our company to reach success. So that's specifically for the leaders in the companies that I just want you to think about and reflect on that. Getting back to the individual contributor, I would like to ask you a question. For a moment, where are you finding yourself on this continuum when it comes to well-being? Do you find yourself in the far right-hand side where you feel good and you're doing well? Maybe you are struggling with life's challenges, finding yourself more to the left-hand side of the continuum, or maybe you're somewhere in between. Think about that for a moment. Now, to really help you to pinpoint what your resources look like. Daryl has mentioned that we will give you access to the Wellbeing Indicator. Now, the Wellbeing Indicator is an assessment that basically assesses your resources that you currently have to deal with the challenges that you're currently facing. So it will give you, so to speak, the state of your current well-being. With that, when you receive your report, you will also be given recommendations and strategies on how to develop the resources that you currently do not have in your arsenal of coping skills. But also, there might be areas that you can enhance even further. So we're leveraging that what is working well and building that what is not working well. Now, through our research, when we designed and developed the Wellbeing Indicator, we have identified a number of facets that contribute to optimal well-being. Now, these facets, and there's 7 of them, are as follows. Right there in the middle, you will see sustained vitality. And sustained vitality is all about your physical wellness. Then we also have positive emotions, and positive emotions speaks to that experience of feel-good emotions. Quality relationships is about the connections you have with other human beings. This would be both your family, but also with people at work. Regular absorption is about your experience of flow. No? When time flies, when you're having fun, focused on a task at hand and really enjoying that task. Then we also have mindful awareness. That speaks to being present in the moment and just experiencing things for what it is, not what you judge them to be. Noble purpose speaks to that feeling of knowing and contributing to something bigger than just yourself. This will be basically personally, from a personal perspective, from a professional perspective, and we've also included there spirituality and religiosity. The last one is optimal performance. And optimal performance speaks to that feeling of setting myself a goal, actively working towards achieving that goal and mastering certain skills. Right, so guys, unfortunately in this session, we will not have the opportunity to really go into detail into all of these facets. But what I've done is I've pulled out a few of these facets and also pulled out 1 or 2 of the most important things that people tend to battle with. I'm going to urge you to try out some of these tactics in your daily lives and basically experience the difference that it might bring to your daily functioning. And you can let me know about that. Right, guys. So I would like to start with sustained vitality. So sustained vitality is literally the energy that you have in your tank. This is energy that we need to perform our daily tasks. The things that we include in sustained vitality are things around our physical fitness or movement. It's about your nutrition or your diet. It's about getting adequate sleep. By the way, that would be 7 to 8 hours per night consecutively. And then also intermittent daytime rest. Now, a typical or a commonly held mental model or belief about sustained vitality is that the more hours we put into our work, the more productive we are. And silently think by yourself, is that actually a fact, or is this a myth? So guys, the problem with time is, of course, that time is finite. You're never going to have more of it. You cannot increase your time. You only have 24 hours in a day, of which, as I mentioned previously, 8 of those you should be sleeping. So that means if we cannot increase our time, we need to actually get a resource of energy somewhere else. Now, interesting enough, capacity is actually in physics refers to the idea of energy. And energy is very essential to fuel our systems. It's like when you have a top-of-the-range model BMW or Mercedes-Benz. It can have all the capability in the world, but if there's no petrol in that tank, you're not going anywhere. So guys, the fact here is then that it's really not the number of hours that we work that determine the value we create. It's actually the energy that we bring to whatever hours we work that makes the difference. Now, one of the main things here is that intermittent renewal fuels healthier productivity. So over and above that, we need to take a look at our nutrition, we need to sleep adequate hours, and we need to have some exercise of some sort. We need to also take breaks every 90 to 120 minutes. Now, some of the benefits of sustained vitality are things like increased energy levels. They improve our quality of sleep. It actually boosts our creativity and attention. We can manage fatigue much better. It increases our productivity and much more. So I would like you to go and try the following out. Boost your sustained vitality by taking regular renewal breaks. Set your alarm clock on your phone. Every 90 minutes, let the alarm go off and just stand up, grab a cup of coffee, go outside, smell the air, and come back and then restart the work. The next area that I would like to discuss is called regular absorption. So regular absorption is all about really focusing on enjoyable tasks. So I mentioned to you, it's that time flies when you're having fun. Now, a typical and commonly held belief when it comes to regular absorption is that multitasking is a very critical skill for the world that we live in today. Now, some of you might say, yes, this is definitely the case. You would need to do that. You have to be able to multitask. That means working on a document right in front of you, answering emails in between, answering calls in between, whoever pops into your door if you're at the office. So dealing with all of these things at the same time. Now, guys, the fact of the matter is the moment we switch between tasks, like quickly giving attention here, quickly giving attention into something else, we actually increase the time that we take to complete that project by as much as 25%. In some cases, even up to 40%. Because your attention is not 100% on what you are doing. You divide your attention between things. And if you do not believe me, there's a little exercise, and we won't be able to do that now. But I will share that with you, and you can try that after the session. The task number 1 is to write down the phrase, multitasking is a myth. And underneath that line, you write the numbers 1 to 20. When you do that, time yourself and see how long it took you to write the sentence and then the numbers. After that, what I would like you to do is then go, and the second task would then be to write down on a continuous line, combining the letters with the numbers. So starting them with N, then 1, then U, then 2, then L, then 3. So alternating between the letters and the numbers. Time yourself and see how long it takes you then to complete the task. This will show you that a person, any human being, and ladies, not even women can do this. No one can multitask. We cannot switch or do more than one cognitive task at once. Right. So guys, some of the benefits of well-being or of regular absorption are things around it increases your life satisfaction and your overall well-being. It actually gives you the opportunity to be really engaged in whatever it is you are doing. This also leads to decreased stress levels and greater mental resilience. It also helps us to feel that we accomplish things, and it strengthens our overall self-worth. So to boost your regular absorption, something for you to do is to create planned opportunities where you can focus on very specific tasks, like that important project that you are working with, that you need 100% attention to focus on, like maybe a DIY project at home that you would like to get going. Set time aside for that, protect that time, and give your 100% attention for 90 minutes or 2 hours when you've scheduled the time for doing that. Right, guys, the next one is called mindful awareness. So a lot of you might have heard of mindfulness before. That is quite the trend at this stage, has been for about more than a year or so. And mindful awareness is all about being present in the moment. It's really about our ability to really remain calm. This is what it helps with, and compose when you are presented with challenges or some type of adversity. Now, the common mental model or belief about mindful awareness is that there's not enough time to really slow down and actually be in the moment. Right. We need to rush from the one thing to the next, the one Zoom meeting to the next Zoom meeting. And then from there, grab something, work quickly on this project in between looking at our mails. And we are not experiencing what's happening around us. So guys, to help you a little bit with that, I'm going to play you a short video clip. And this is something that you can practice on your own as well. So let's just see, does the video play? Please just let me know. Come on.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So this is just a quick exercise where we can make use of our five senses to just be in the moment. And you would have seen that it's not going to even take you 2 minutes to do so. Now, guys, you might ask me, all right, so what is the upside of making use of your five senses as per this exercise and being mindful in the moment? So research has actually indicated that mindful awareness reduces things like stress and rumination, okay? I always battle with that word. It also boosts your working memory. It can really increase your focus. It's something that can let you be calm and composed in difficult circumstances. And it really increases also your cognitive flexibility when you need to move from one task to the next task. Now, some of these benefits are things around increasing your concentration and focus. It actually also protects you against psychological distresses and burnout. Something that you can also try to boost your mindful awareness is to create what we call the third space. So you might ask me now, what is the third space? So the third space is the space between the first and the second space, right? And the first space you might view as, let's say, an activity of some kind, or an engagement of some kind. So maybe it's a meeting. You have one Zoom meeting, and after that Zoom meeting where you had to deal with, let's say, an important project, you need to move to another meeting where you need to discuss performance with an employee. Now, the space in between is that third space, or moving from work. Maybe you're working from home, and then after work, you need to move into the second space, which is then be mom, dad, partner, and doing the family thing. That third space is the time that we need to focus and reflect on what happened in the previous meeting or engagement. Rest a bit, so take a deep breath. Can I still be present in what's to come? And then deciding, how am I going to show up for the next engagement? A little tip for you is to stop your meetings 5 minutes before the next meeting starts, and just gather yourself so that you can be fully present when you move into that second space. You can also take a look on YouTube. The guy that coined the third space is Adam Fraser, and he's got a very interesting little video clip that you can take a look at to see how exactly the third space works. The last facet that I would like to share with you is positive emotions. And positive emotions are our feel-good emotions. Those feelings of awe, of happiness, of enjoyment. And quite interesting enough, guys, in a lot of the well-being indicators that we've done, and a lot of the assessments on depression and anxiety that has been going on through this whole COVID pandemic, has indicated the one place that people have dropped significantly is in the experience of positive emotions. Because let's face it, people, a lot of you would say life is a serious business. It's serious stuff. We take ourselves very, very seriously. And I want to ask you the question, when last did you experience any of these emotions? Really experience joy, interest, amusement, awe, or love? The thing is about positive emotions is that they actually counter negative emotions. That quite seems intuitively. But positive emotions also really enhance our attention. It opens us up to possibility and creativity. If you are in a space where you need to be innovative and creative, this is what you need to boost that innovation, that experience of positive emotions. Now that might, some of you would be familiar with some of the well-being practices that happens at some innovation companies like Google. That is why they have spaces where people can have fun, because positive emotions boosts creativity. The benefits of positive emotions is that it really increases our coping skills, and it helps us to deal with stresses and demands and challenges much easier. So to boost your positive emotions, try something out, something like a gratitude journal. This is something that you can just quickly do 5 minutes during the day. I actually have one that I write at the end of my day, where I've got one question to answer. It's a little 5-year diary, and every day there's a different question. And this question just asks me one thing. Last night it asked me, I should write down a song or a poem to something that I know that can describe the day that I've experienced. So, and then just mention, what am I grateful for? What are the great things that happened to me or that I caused today? Okay, guys, that brings us to the end of this presentation. And before I open up for questions, I would like to ask you this. How are you leaving this webinar today? Are you feeling overwhelmed and stressed? Or are you in that thriving zone? Maybe you are in the middle. What resonated with you? What applies to your life? And I would really like to challenge you to take at least one of the tactics that I shared with you today and implement them. And see what is the difference in your life in just as little as a week's time. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and questions are welcome.
Thanks, Heidi. That was really cool. While we're waiting nobody's actually posted any questions. So if anybody's got any specific questions you want to post, just to let you guys know that Heidi is actually working with a couple of the Nolands clients already. And Heidi, maybe you could just give us maybe one of the interventions that you've done with one of the guys on the EGN group. I'm not going to mention names, but how have you got involved with his team, and how have you just taken him on a journey? I've seen personally the change in him as an individual. So just you wanted to take us just so people can see how practically what you've achieved with him personally and with his business.
Okay, so yes, I know which client you're talking about, and I had some very he would say to you that one of the most difficult conversations he's ever had in his life was with me, because I asked him the questions that nobody else asked, and it was about your own personal well-being. So what happened was this specific client, I can't now mention the client's name. They've decided throughout this COVID pandemic, their people were flailing. They were tired, people were stressed out. There's a lot of demands and difficulties that people had to deal with. This is both on a personal level, but also on a professional level. And we started engaging with them, and we started with what we call building well-being capability within organizations. This is where we literally equip the leadership of that organization with key mental models around well-being. And what can be done, easy, straightforward practices that can increase well-being or facilitate well-being within the organization. Now, remember, As I mentioned earlier, no one can give you well-being. An organization can just put enablers in place. But the individual need to take up those enablers and actually apply them to make a difference in their lives. Now, in particular with this CEO and his leadership team, I do have some individual coaching sessions with some of the leadership that are experiencing some well-being issues of their own. So that's on a personal level and how they can best deal with that. But we also equip the leadership team with skills so that they can enable the people that work for them. What he has said to me from a productivity point of view when it comes to their company is that they are actually doing very well. And he cannot believe the difference that the program has made just in the open and honest conversations that happen between employees, but also between leadership and employees. People are there for one another. They support one another. Whether or not the issues that people are dealing with are personal or professional.
Thanks, Heidi. I think, there's been a couple of comments that come through. Anton has mentioned that he's been practicing this for a while. So, yeah, he can vouch for it. So, guys, I think we've got 5 minutes to go. But, Heidi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thanks, everybody on the group for joining us. I think it's been a positive session. And what we will do after this is we'll send out a copy of the video. Megan will organize that everybody can download the video, and then we can have a look. I'm going to go and personally take those 5 senses thing. It's going to, that's quite interesting when you actually try and focus on that. So yeah, thank you very much. And then if anybody's got any questions, you want to connect directly with Heidi, we're going to circulate her details. Yeah, I can personally vouch. Heidi and I are on a group called Executive Global Network together, and she seriously challenges all of us CEOs. So yeah, I vouch for the chap that she's been speaking to, but I can definitely say that I've seen a marked improvement in terms of where he is and what he's personally doing. So yeah, thanks everybody, greatly appreciate it. Have a lekker day further, and thanks Heidi again. Cheers.
Absolute pleasure.